There was no mic snatch, no dramatic outburst, no viral shove. But make no mistake, something happened on that stage, and it shook the room in silence. The moment was so quiet, it almost didn't register. No gasps, no cameras panning in, just a subtle tension, as if everyone collectively stopped breathing. A pause so sharp, you could hear the fabric of Viola Davis's gown shift as she turned, mid-speech, to face the person inching toward her. But before we continue, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And the words? Simple, deliberate. Step down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even move. But she didn't have to. The weight of those two words dropped like a stone in water, sending ripples far beyond the ballroom walls. But why? Why would Viola Davis, a woman known for grace under fire, interrupt a moment honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr.? To halt someone's approach? And why was that someone Meghan Markle? Let's be clear. This wasn't a red carpet moment. This wasn't an award show where celebrities exchange empty air kisses. This was the beloved Community Awards, a space steeped in reverence, civil rights history, and ancestral weight. A stage where each speaker is chosen not just for visibility, but for values. And on that night, Viola wasn't just giving a speech. She was holding sacred ground. So what happened? Why did Meghan, seated 3 rows back, according to multiple attendees, begin moving toward the stage, just as Viola was deep into her remarks on justice, memory, and silence? Depending on who you ask, the answer shifts. Some claim it was an innocent moment, that Meghan merely intended to stand beside a fellow woman of color in solidarity. Others suggest something less innocent. A planned move, perhaps even calculated, designed to generate a visual moment that could live online long after the event ended. But then there's what happened next. Because while the moment on stage passed quickly, the fallout afterward did not. Witnesses say Meghan's expression froze, her body mid-step, as Viola barely turned her head and delivered the quiet command. No confrontation, no continuation, just the assertion of boundary. And that's what stayed with people. Not the movement, not the outfit, but the boundary. Why does that matter? Because in 2026, with culture at an all-time high in performative allyship, self-branding, and symbolic optics, boundaries have become blurry. And when someone draws a line, especially someone like Viola Davis, people pay attention. But here's the thing. This wasn't just a moment between two women. It was a moment between two ideas. One rooted in legacy. The other, arguably, in visibility. And what if I told you? This wasn't the first time these two women's paths have crossed behind the scenes. That there's a longer tension, unspoken, unrecorded, but unmistakable, between Hollywood royalty and actual civil rights reverence? Because what happened next, after the cameras stopped and the applause faded, revealed far more than just a stage misstep. It revealed what happens when symbolism meets substance, and only one is invited to speak. What does a stage really mean? Is it just a raised platform, a spotlight, a mic? Or is it a sacred space? One that, in certain moments, holds more weight than the people standing on it? This stage, the one where Viola Davis stood on that January night, wasn't built for spectacle. It wasn't meant to go viral. It wasn't made for the trending tab. It was something else entirely. And everyone in that room knew it. Because this wasn't Hollywood. This was Atlanta. And not just any night. It was the 2026 Beloved Community Awards honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. You've probably seen clips of it before. Quiet, regal, heavy with the presence of ancestors. No flashing lights, no branded step and repeat, no stylists darting in with powder brushes. Just community leaders, faith figures, changemakers, and a few invited voices from the arts. The kind who've earned their place not just through fame, but through contribution. And when Viola Davis stepped onto that stage, the room shifted. She wasn't there as an actress. She wasn't even there as a celebrity. She was there as an honoree, selected for her work amplifying Black stories, protecting women in the industry, and using her voice not to promote herself, but to preserve others. The moment was solemn. She opened with a soft invocation. Something about memory, about presence, about carrying stories that were never given proper endings. And that's when the movement began. It was small at first, subtle. One person standing up, not from the front row, but somewhere further back. Maybe third or fourth. Maybe not in the camera's line of sight at all. But someone saw. Then another. And then the air in the room changed. Because it wasn't just anyone walking toward the stage. It was Meghan Markle. Now, before we go further, think carefully. Why would someone walk toward the stage in the middle of a speech that wasn't meant to be shared? Not before their name was called. Not after an introduction. Not as part of a planned segment. Just moving. Approaching. Alone. Some say it was a show of unity. An unspoken signal of sisterhood. Others say it felt different. That it wasn't a moment of solidarity, but of interruption. And here's the thing. There's no clear footage. Just shaky cell phone clips, half-blocked angles, whispers online. But what people remember isn't the movement. It's the reaction. Because as Meghan reached the final steps before the stage, something unspoken snapped. And without missing a beat, without raising her voice or faltering in her delivery, Viola Davis turned, looked directly at her, and said it. Step down. 2 words. Calm. Still. Final. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Not loud. Just clear. And the entire room froze. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was unexpectedly firm. It was the kind of moment that tells you everything without explaining anything. But what makes this truly complicated is what that stage represented. Because for some people in that room, this wasn't about protecting an event. It was about protecting a legacy. A legacy built not on platforms or followers, but on pain, and work, and history. So the question becomes, who gets to share that space? And what happens when someone crosses the invisible line? Because what came next didn't happen on camera, and it didn't need to. It was just 2 words. That's it. No spotlight flicker. No music cut. No shouted order into a headset. Just step down. And somehow, that was enough to shift the air in the room. But let's think about that for a moment. Really think. Because it wasn't what Viola Davis said that turned heads. It was the way she said it. Or maybe more accurately, the way she didn't say anything else. No explanation. No scolding. Not even a gesture to security. She just said the words and stood her ground. Which raises a bigger question. How can a phrase so simple carry such weight? It's not about the volume. It's about who says it and where. Viola Davis is not the kind of person to react impulsively. Her public image is built on deliberate speech, stillness, presence. When she speaks, it's not just sound, it's signal. And that night, the signal was unmistakable. Something about Meghan's approach crossed a line. Not a physical one, a symbolic one. And here's the irony. Meghan didn't make a scene. She didn't argue. She didn't protest. She froze. Just paused mid-step, eyes locked for a moment too long, then slowly turned and returned to her seat. But even that small movement, that pivot, that quiet retreat, set off a low murmur that wouldn't die down. Because everyone felt it. That tension between visibility and permission. Between showing up and being invited. It's uncomfortable, right? We live in a world where the line between ally and actor is increasingly blurry. Between solidarity and self-branding. Between participation and performance. And suddenly, in that pause, the entire room was forced to confront a question no one expected to face that night. Who gets to share sacred space? And maybe more importantly, who gets to say no? Because Step Down wasn't just about Meghan. It wasn't personal, at least not entirely. It was about something much older than either of them. The legacy of Dr. King. The burden of a stage built on sacrifice. The quiet understanding that not every moment is yours to join, no matter who you are. And yet, here's the contradiction. For all the calm in that moment, the fallout behind the scenes was anything but quiet. Because while Meghan may have stepped down, others were just getting started. The whispers backstage weren't about what had happened. They were about why. And depending on who you ask, the reasons vary. Wildly. Some say there was history between the 2 women. Some say Viola had been warned beforehand. Others insist Meghan was blindsided, humiliated publicly in a space she thought she was welcome. But none of those versions appeared in any press release. No one issued a statement. Not the King Center. Not Viola. Not Meghan. Just silence. Which, of course, only made people listen harder. But there's something else we haven't talked about yet. And this is where it gets even more complicated. Because later that night, long after the lights dimmed, someone close to the event leaked a quiet exchange that may completely reframe the entire moment. An exchange that didn't happen on stage. Didn't happen on camera. but may have happened just moments before Meghan stood up. And if it's true, it could change everything we thought we understood about what unfolded on that stage. Public moments end fast. Applause. Exit music. Stage cleared. But the real stories? They usually begin when the cameras stop rolling. This one was no different. The moment between Viola Davis and Meghan Markle passed in less than 30 seconds. No scene, no confrontation, just that razor-sharp line and a quiet retreat. From a distance, it almost looked elegant. Two women navigating an awkward hiccup with dignity. But backstage, it was something else entirely. Multiple sources who attended the private reception afterward, most of them off the record, described a kind of chill that hung in the air. Not anger, not scandal, just unease. Like no one knew how to name what had just happened. Or worse, no one wanted to. And yet, the whispers started almost immediately. Not about what was said on stage, that part was already clear, but what happened before Meghan stood up. According to one unconfirmed source close to the event's planning committee, there was a brief exchange earlier in the evening. Meghan had reportedly asked, quietly, if she might say a few words during Viola's speech. Something short, something meaningful. A gesture of shared sisterhood, perhaps, or acknowledgement of a broader community. The request was said to have been met with hesitation. Not because of who she was, but because of what the speech represented. Viola Davis's remarks that evening weren't just personal. They were crafted over weeks with the King Center's board. They were built around themes of legacy, displacement, memory, with words chosen as carefully as stones for a memorial. This wasn't a freestyle moment. It was an open mic night. And here's where it gets murky. Another source claims the request wasn't formally denied, just ignored, which may explain why, when Meghan rose mid-speech, some thought she was acting on a green light. Others saw it as something closer to trespass, a misread of sacred timing. And here's the real kicker. Someone in the room claims Viola knew Meghan might stand up, that she'd been told it could happen, and that her calm, unwavering response wasn't a reaction at all. It was a preemptive line already drawn. If that's true, it changes everything. Because then we're not just talking about a moment of spontaneous tension. We're talking about a woman who saw something coming and decided exactly how she would handle it if it did. It turns the story from accidental awkwardness to quiet assertion. And that brings us back to the stage itself. Because after the event, no official statement was made. No follow-up interview. No social media post to clarify, celebrate, or deny. Just a cold digital trail. Meghan's team went silent. Viola didn't post. The King Center made no mention of the moment. But observant viewers noticed something. By morning, nearly all footage of the full speech had been trimmed before it hit official channels. Edited. Tightened. The moment in question? Gone. Or hidden. Now ask yourself, why? Why erase something that, on the surface, was handled with grace? Why scrub a moment of boundary if that boundary was respected? Unless, of course, it was never meant to happen in the first place. But there's one more thread, and it's the one almost no one saw coming. Because hours later, at a quiet dinner across town, a well-known figure who attended the ceremony told someone at the table that this moment was long overdue. And when asked what they meant by that, they reportedly replied, "It's not the first time Meghan tried to share someone else's moment. It's just the first time someone told her no out loud." It's strange, isn't it? The most powerful moment of the night didn't come from a speech. It wasn't in the applause. It wasn't in the camera flashes. It came in the form of absence, of restraint, of two words spoken softly, and everything that followed left unsaid. And maybe that's the point. Because in a culture obsessed with being seen, sometimes the most radical act is to set a boundary. Viola Davis didn't confront anyone. She didn't escalate. She didn't take to social media afterward. She didn't leverage it for applause. She simply drew a line. And when she did, the entire room understood. This moment wasn't meant to be shared. Now, does that mean Meghan Markle acted with ill intent? That's not something anyone can say with certainty. Maybe she saw an opportunity for solidarity. Maybe she misread the tone. Maybe, and this is important, maybe she thought her presence would be welcomed, even necessary, in a room meant to uplift voices of progress. But there's a fine line between participation and intrusion, between standing beside someone and standing in front of them. And when the weight of legacy is involved, When the memory of Dr. King is invoked not for performance, but for purpose, the rules change. Not officially, not with printed programs or stage markers, but spiritually. And that's what this was. A spiritual moment. Which brings us back to the very beginning. The moment we started with. That almost imperceptible shift in the room. The silence. Because the truth is, everyone in that ballroom witnessed something. Even if they couldn't name it. And everyone watching from the outside. They felt it too. That uneasy sense that something deeper had taken place. That beneath the optics and the elegance and the speculation, this was about ownership of space. About who holds the mic when the room was built by sacrifice. And who knows when to listen. So what now? Will Meghan speak out? Possibly not. Will Viola explain? Unlikely. Because maybe the message was already delivered. Not as a public reprimand, but as a quiet reminder that not all spaces